So we're now on to the Women's Six Nations Fantasy, and hopefully lots of you who got involved with the men's will now get involved with the women's tournament. After all, it's the chance to compete against your friends and family and have a bit of fun. As a sport, rugby has a lot of catching up to do in terms of how it markets itself. And being a small YouTuber, I hope I can get a few more people involved in the game, especially the women's. So let's see last year's best fantasy team, which should give us an insight into who to pick for the opening round of the weekend. So last year, the best fantasy front row options were Jugang, Maloney and Kennedy, but unfortunately the only player that remains in this tournament is Jugang. She's one of those props who likes to do a lot more work than what's usually associated with props, much like Genge and Bai. You'll see her carry an open play and break tackles with her sheer power, and we all know that fantasy love to reward carrying props. And Jugang certainly does that. Other front row options to look at are the likes of Byrne, who starts for England on Saturday. She too likes to carry hard and seems to always have a smile on her face while she does it. Hookers to look at might be the Irish side in Jones, who actually starts this weekend as well. They come up against Wales in the first round, who have actually just been given some of their players professional contracts for the first ever time, which is brilliant to see. However, Wales aren't the strongest of teams, and I do expect Ireland to win pretty comprehensively, especially on home soil. The two second rows who scored the most points last year were Zoe Oldcroft and Poppy Cleal. Oldcroft doesn't start this weekend and isn't even on the bench, so I'm thinking this might be an injury of some sort. I'm sure England wouldn't just leave out the Women's Player of the Year, so keep an eye out for her in this tournament. Cleal is actually a back row on fantasy, and she does start at 6 on the weekend, so I expect lots of carrying and meters made, especially against Scotland, who are on paper not the strongest, and England are the reigning champs. The back row is a mix of nations, with Packer, Wall and Gross being the best from last year. Fortunately, they are all in this year's Six Nations, so if you wanted, you could pick the exact back row that was best last year. Simon Middleton, the England women's head coach, said that Marley Packer is the best player in the Premiership at the moment, so that's all you need to know about what she can offer. Dorothy Wall for Ireland was named Irish Women's Player of the Year last year, and she's only 21 years old, which is absolutely crazy to think, and she's definitely got a bright future ahead of her, and she can be a real destructive back row option for you. And finally is Gross. Gross is another explosive and meter-hungry back row player. She's a key cog in that French engine, and she'd be vital for them if they are to rival England this year. France are probably the second best team in the tournament and have before won the Six Nations back in 2018. So I expect big things from France this year. To kick off the halfbacks, it's an Italian 9 by the name of Scarah Barrettin. Now, she is the most capped Italian women's player who started playing at the age of 18. She's now 35 and raring to go, as she comes off the back of a decent Six Nations last time out, obviously being the best 9 choice in fantasy rugby. Italy are also no slouch, just like the men teams are showing. And to join her at 10 is England halfback Helena Rowland. She's at the other end of this age spectrum at 22. She's been part of the England 7 setup, so you know she can play, and we all know how well playing tends to do in fantasy rugby. Just look at how well Marcus Smith did this year. So keep an eye out on Rowland for these next few weeks. In the centres is former World Player of the Year Emily Scarah. Now with Scarah, you can bet on her scoring points. She not only takes kicks at goal, but can also score a fair amount of tries. She started her England career back in 2008 with 12 tries in 12 games, and has also finished as top point scorer in the Rugby World Cup. To top that, she's now become England's most highest ever point scorer, which is just phenomenal, and also finished last year's Six Nations Player of the Championship. Now if that doesn't get you to pick her, then I don't know what will. Definitely a strong option for captain in any game week. and to partner her is French centre Gabrielle Vernier. Vernier has been applauded by strong defensive work in the midfield. France beat Wales 53-0 in the opening round of last year's tournament, and guess who was voted Player of the Round? Yep, Vernier. So you can be sure she will get you decent points in the opening round of this weekend. Now the back three consists of all French players. This is some alliteration for you, in Banet, Boulard and Boujard. Unfortunately, Boujard is not in the French squad, which is disappointing for fancy players because she scored a hat-trick in the first game of last year. But Banet and Boulard can be picked, and they can offer some real firepower. Last year, France put 50 plus points on both Wales and Ireland, with Banet and Boulard scoring in those games. If that doesn't inspire you to pick some of this French back three, then I don't know what will. They're sure to get plenty of meters as well, as they like to have ball in hand, so be sure to keep an eye out on the French back three. So that concludes the best women's fantasy team of last year in 2021. There will definitely be some of these players who make that team again. It's just trying to figure out which ones will perform best. I'll be bringing out another video tomorrow with my team selection for round 1 to help you guys out a little more. Let's keep boosting the women's game by getting involved. Remember to join the league by using the link down in the description, and I hope to see you guys there. So without further ado, that's the end of the video, and I'll see you in the next one.